Hello, my friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family. Well, guys, bomb hoaxes across the nation. Threats were emailed all around to schools, businesses, media companies, basically demanding money in Bitcoin. And supposedly it's a hoax. So that's the good news. And as it says here, there have been multiple reports that emailed bomb threats to businesses, universities, newspapers across the country. FBI is investigating, says it's in contact with law enforcement to provide assistance and reminding citizens to remain vigilant. But so far, they found no credible threats. Yet you gotta wonder. You really gotta wonder, because we've obviously all been feeling something's coming. We could all see the signs of something's coming. And like last night, we were talking, and actually, we were saying that it feels like there's something 9/11-ish coming, or perhaps even worse than 9/11 that's coming. And so you gotta wonder about this. Is this just individuals having a laugh, actually thinking perhaps they could get somebody to pay them, money on these threats? Or is this like a test run, perhaps? Or crying sheep, a big bad wolf is coming type of stuff. And then when something does come, maybe we won't take it seriously at first. So very interesting. This was all over the place. All over the place. Everybody was buzzing about it. My phone was getting hit with people coming in with messages from all over the world telling me about this. Did you see this? Did you see this? And we could see there's evacuations that were going on. And everywhere you look, Iowa, we had Florida. This is actually Bradenton, the town, one town away from where I used to live and where my sister had her place. Seattle, Washington, Dixie State University. I mean, it's just all over. Oklahoma, NY, New York. So this was really, really big. What was this? Do you think this was like some sort of test run? Or was it just a simple hoax? It's got to make you wonder a little. With everything that's been going on, what we've been seeing and feeling, experiencing, is it just a coincidence? What's really going on? Hopefully we'll find out at some point. There's a lot going on in the world, and that is for sure. And there's been a lot going on. Let's first go over here. So, as we've been talking about with the US, China, and Russia, there's been a ton of stuff going on there. And we've talked about how well China has done to really lay their investments in South America and Africa, with all the basically the groundwork they've done, the infrastructure they've done, the loans to these countries. And so U.S. to Africa, pick either the U.S. or China and Russia, not both. John Bolton, the National Security Advisor, lays out new American policy on Africa that aims to reward allies with trade and investment and punish others. Okay, so what do we get out of this? This is either you're with us or you're against us. This is either you're on one side or you're our enemy. Basically, you're on our side or you're our enemy. That's what this is saying. This is stiff. This is strong, and it's not unexpected at the same time because I think we could see it. I think most of us could see it, and I see that in the comments that the lines are being drawn in the sand. And it's kind of like we're in a tinder box right now. And so it's hard to get any sort of info out of Google, honestly. I feel like Google is burying stuff. But thankfully, there's so many of you guys out there that are always sending me info because you live in these other countries. You live in the Ukraine, you live in Syria, you live in France, And so we're able to see what's going on in the newspapers of these other countries, which of course you would never find any of this stuff going on if you just simply relied on mainstream media. And unfortunately, even if you're really kind of just looking at what Google is throwing out there, or Yahoo News, or any of the usual places that we look at for news and saying what's going on in the world, there's a lot that's really hidden now, and it's disconcerting in some ways. You really got to dig deeper. And so this is out of Donetsk news agency, and it says there's a massive Ukrainian offensive to begin on December 14th. Now, I don't know whether to believe this or not. It appears to be a official newspaper. And so, this basically says a large Ukrainian force of 12,000 troops is to launch a massive offensive on Mariupol direction on December 14th, said DPR People's Militia Deputy Chief of Staff Eduard Basurin. Our intelligence has irrefutable proof of a prepared offensive of Ukrainian forces on Mariupol direction. The information received from reliable sources reveals all their plans. Their aim is to gain control over Novorovsky and Telemanovsky districts in the DPR Russian border section outside of Konkovo and Kolodnoy. A shock force of over 12,000 troops is concentrated along the contact line, and it's basically comprised of 50 tanks, 40 MLRSs, and 180 artillery pieces and mortars. So a dozen of MLRS's Smerch systems were relocated to the area as well. 500 troops, AER, or this probably should be R in a standby status. And so, it gets into the actual plan. So I don't know if you could believe this is leaked, if this is propaganda, perhaps, because I wasn't really aware of. We know there's tension, obviously, between Ukraine and Russia, and we're kind of waiting for something to be lit there. And we suspect that that might be the spot that causes a bigger conflagration. However, like when we check out over here as well, and this is out of union.info, and here it says Ukrainian soldier was shot dead by enemy sniper in Donbas on Thursday. Russian-led forces mounted 9 attacks on the Ukrainian army from basically midnight 1800 Kiev time on December 13th. And so, if this is true, it's not being reported in U.S. mainstream. And of course, we have the Russians saying the Ukrainians are the ones that started the whole thing. Of course, the Ukrainians are saying the Russians started the whole thing. And of course, whichever side their allies are on, we're always going to take the side of their allies. So we don't really know. And unfortunately, in this situation with so many media sources being completely unreliable, the only thing we could do is just present these articles and say, you got to use your own discernment. And some of you guys will probably know more about these papers than I do as well, about these, websites, and, might have more insight on this. But I was not aware that there are basically skirmishes going on, between the Ukrainian troops and the Russian troops. I knew in the past there was. I didn't know there was anything still ongoing, but apparently that is the case. And so this gets into some detail in there. Our troops' positions were attacked with the use of grenade launchers, various systems, large caliber machine guns, small arms near the towns of Mariinka and Krasnohorvinka in the Donetsk sector, and near the villages of Lebedinsky in the Mariupol sector. And so it's interesting to follow this. And then when we look even deeper in, apparently there's been more attacks for a more prolonged period of time as well, as if this is something that is still really, fairly active. Russian-led forces mount 11 attacks on Ukraine troops since Sunday midnight, as we see a soldier there. Russia's hybrid military forces have mounted 11 attacks on Ukrainian troops in Donbas since Sunday at midnight. So again, it gets into more detail. So, whether this is starting to heat up, we know it's a tinderbox. We know it is one of the scenarios that would be a likely one that could lead to basically another global war. And over here, this is Zero Hedge. We have the U.S. reports the biggest ever budget deficit for November. 2 months after U.S. Treasury reported the widest annual deficit in 60 years for fiscal 2018, moments ago, the U.S. posted the biggest November budget deficit on record as total government spending came in twice as much as revenue. That's not a good sign. That's not really healthy. So, can we really be happy about that? I would guess not, right? November outlays surged 18.4% to $411 billion last month from $347 billion a year ago. That's a huge increase, while receipts actually declined 1% to $206 billion from $208 billion in 2017. And as far as I've shared with you guys, I'm neither pro-Democrat or pro-Republican. I tend to side more with a libertarian view, and no matter how you look at it, these numbers are not good. This is not good. This is not something to brag about. The biggest spending categories were Social Security, Medicare, national defense, income security, health. Net interest on the U.S. debt of nearly $22 trillion came in at a hefty $33 billion in interest. Meanwhile, individual income taxes and Social Security taxes both generated $93 billion in income. So, not a pretty scenario, and actually getting worse. So that's, to say it, quite clearly, it's a wee bit distressing, wouldn't you say, that things are not improving and actually getting worse. But then when we look at, of course, certain sides will say that, look at, this is the best that we've ever seen. But the numbers really aren't showing it. And unfortunately, everything, as we've said before, keeps progressing in the wrong direction no matter what party we have in there. Economically for sure, and really when you're talking about the well-being of the average U.S. citizen, it's not getting any better. Not at all. In fact, we're getting deeper and deeper in a hole all the time. And as we said, it really doesn't matter who's in there. And so in a stinging rebuke to Trump, Senate votes to end support for the Saudi war. And the U.S. Senate approved a resolution to end support for the Saudi-led war in Yemen, dealing a stinging rebuke to President Trump amid heightened tensions over the death of U.S.-based journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Senators voted 56 to 41 on the resolution, which would require the president to withdraw any troops in or affecting Yemen within 30 days unless they are fighting al-Qaeda. In doing so, the Senate defied a veto threat from the White House, which has vowed it would block the legislation. And of course, as we talked about before, that's because Saudi Arabia is the #1 arms purchaser of weapons from the U.S. So, that's why they're our biggest customer, as far as the military-industrial complex goes. And so it's all about the money, really, even though morally, obviously reprehensible as far as Saudi Arabia goes, and that whole war in Yemen, where, as we have said before, 5 million people are in danger of starvation. And so huge buzz going on now that Clinton's and Uranium One whistleblowers' explosive testimony on Capitol Hill. There are those out there, there's a lot of sources saying that the Clintons' D-Day is upon them, and that it won't be long before, some are saying before you won't see them let off in shackles. And we'll see if that day comes. But, right now there are testifying right now as far as the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee right now. And so it's big time, and people are looking for what has been rumored forever to happen. And maybe some of these, indictments, maybe some of these military tribunals are actually going to be coming around soon. We'll see. We'll definitely see. But there's a lot of people saying right now this is it for the Clintons, and then there are also those saying, because the Clintons have been so much in the deep state pocket, watch out for any sort of big false flag, diversion or anything to get the attention off of this. And so Maria Butina pleads guilty to U.S. charge of conspiring to act as a foreign agent, as she's posing there with some high-tech weaponry. So she's a Russian woman arrested in July and accused of acting as a foreign agent within the United States. She pleaded guilty to one count of conspiracy. So she was accused of acting as a Russian agent to infiltrate the NRA lobby group, which is closely linked to Republican politicians close to U.S. President Donald Trump, and to sway U.S. foreign policy towards Moscow. When asked by a judge whether the charges read by prosecutors were correct, she responded yes. By pleading guilty, she waived the right to trial and appeal. Judge Tanya Chutkin said that she found that Butina was fully competent to make the plea. In the signed statement obtained by NBC News, Butina said that she had sought to establish unofficial lines of communication with Americans having power and influence over U.S. politics, and that she did so on behalf of the Russian government. Chutkin also said that she was satisfied that Butina was competent and accepted the plea. Depending on her level of cooperation with U.S. investigators, she could receive a lighter sentence before probably being deported to Russia. Acting as an unregistered foreign agent within the U.S. can carry a sentence of up to 5 years in prison. She didn't offer sex for the job, prosecutors admit. She had been living in the U.S. on a student visa, and prosecutors had alleged that she was working as an agent under the direction of Russian banking official. Her lawyers identified that man as Alexander Torshin, but he was not mentioned by name in the official plea documents submitted to court. So interesting, the sentencing date has not been set yet. And it's very interesting to follow all these maneuvers. Meanwhile, we have the Turkish army begin striking Kurdish forces in northern Aleppo, and this is against the U.S.'s direction, basically. This is something the U.S. did not want to see happen. And the Kurds have worked actually very hard with U.S.-led forces in Iraq. And, it's part of showing how Turkey is truly doing their own thing, and they are more, even though they're part of NATO, they're more aligned really with Russia at this point in the BRICS nations. So according to the nearby Syrian Arab army, the Turkish military has been heavily shelling the YPG's positions at the town of Tal Rifa'at. And the Syrian Arab army said they are on high alert now because the Turkish army's shells were landing near their positions in the countryside. More details to come. And so this is just another one. We have so many hotspots right now that can go full bore and just spread so quickly. And talking about spreading quickly, Holland heats up, Belgium burns as French yellow vest protests spread across Europe. And the protests continue to rage in France. Discontent is festering elsewhere in Europe at the same time. What began as a routine protest deep in Paris has swelled to over 100,000 people, approximately 5 locations throughout the country. Anger over yet another eco-fascist gas tax seems to have been the straw that finally broke the camel's back. And the editor's note in here, when I watch the yellow vest protests in France and now in other parts of Europe, I can't help but wonder if this is where we too are headed for here in the United States. Between widespread political divisiveness and an economy that is truly suffering, despite what you see in the news, people here are really fed up too. It's only a matter of time before people in the U.S. take to the streets by the hundreds of thousands and say enough. It's truly essential to watch what's going on in Europe and to get a glimpse at our potential future and to prepare for it. And so, that is the big thing that we have been talking about, prepare for it, because this is something that's going to spread everywhere. We could feel it. It's spreading, and it's so deep. It's really about the whole status quo. It's about the whole system. And it's really, it goes far deeper than just that tax. Because Macron has said, okay, forget about it, guys. And you know what? I'm going to give you a raise too. Just, cool off. And things aren't cooling off. And so we need to prepare for any situation. And we've been talking about preparation. And this gets into the protest in the Netherlands and where are they headed? No one knows where, these are really headed. But it's clearly the sense on the part of the protesters and ordinary Europeans that they are losing their countries. They're losing it to a globalist agenda, whether it be free trade, immigration, eco-fascism, higher taxation, lower wages, or a confluence of all and more of those issues. And so, again, this is just one other timber box that could just go up in flames. Macron handily survives. No confidence vote in France. But even after the French leader backed down on the planned fuel tax increases and a plan to help the angry working class, he still faces protests. So, he did survive a no confidence vote. How long will that last? And what will it take to perhaps get him out? Suspect in mass killing in that shooting in Strasbourg is killed by the police. So his name was Sharif Chekhat, and he was 29. He'd been on a run since the mass shooting Tuesday night that killed 3, injured 13, out of Strasbourg's Christmas market. And so the police did find him, and he is dead now. And Theresa May survives confidence vote of Tory MPs for now. And so she has won a vote of confidence in her leadership of the Conservative Party by 200 to 117. So after securing 63% of the total vote, she's now immune from a leadership challenge for a year. And she spoke on Downing Street, and she vowed to deliver the Brexit people voted for, but she has listened to the concerns of MPs who voted against her. Her supporters urged the party to move on, but critics said losing the support of a third of the MPs was devastating. The Prime Minister won the confidence vote with a majority of 83, with 60% of Conservative MPs backing her and 37 voting against her. And we have the IDF encircles de facto Palestinian capital in response to terror attack. And this is just another one of those areas that could blow up at any moment. There are so many of them in so many situations across the globe right now. Israel's military has blocked all entry and all exit points to the Palestinian city of Ramallah after 2 Israelis were killed in an attack on West Bank. The move comes after a Palestinian gunman opened fire on a roadway on Thursday morning, killing 2 Israelis and leaving another 2 critically injured. The IDF believes the attacker then fled the scene by car, driving somewhere near Ramallah. So, another one of those issues. And in case you were wondering, yes, it has been 10 whole years. 10 years ago today, Al Gore predicted the North Pole would be completely ice-free in 5 years. So we gave them twice as much time, and it's still not ice-free. And as we have showed you guys before, it's pretty much where it was. It's right at an average, when you get down to it. So, is he a false prophet? Well, I guess technically, right? And he made that prediction to a German audience on December 13th, 2008. The entire North polarized cap will disappear in 5 years. And it didn't happen. And yet, at the same time, Arctic ice is not even really increasing. What's happening is It's going up and down an awful lot now. So there's a lot of fluctuation going on. But we have crazy weather everywhere. We really, really do. And we have extremes that are getting more extreme by the day. And that is the same situation with the political situation. It seems to be getting more extreme by the day. Think about the polarization that we see. It just seems like our whole reality, our whole world is getting more polarized, more extreme. Do you guys sense that too? Because it seems to be the case. It seems like there's no middle ground. Everything is just ramping up so high or crashing down so low. And so perhaps it's just simply a sign of the times and the fact that we are in the end of an age, end of an era. And now we're going through the birth pangs into a new era, a new, completely different time frame. And order out of chaos. Well, we certainly have chaos all around us, and we sense that there's greater chaos coming. And that is definitely, I think many of us feel that it's knocking on the door. And, you know, many of us are not even so tempted to look out that door. Instead, you know, there's many people that want to kind of put their head down into the sand. But now is not time to do that. Now it's the time to prepare in every way, you know, physically, mentally, and spiritually. And take time for yourselves to de-stress too, because these times can be very tense and cause a lot of anxiety. And make sure that you have a way of relieving that in a healthy manner, hopefully, as well. So my friends, as always, please do thumbs up to support the channel, subscribe, click the bell, join the family, and get all the notifications and share with as many as possible so we have more prepared and ready people and less people that will be panicking later on. As always, my friends, may you be blessed with abundant peace, love, good health, happiness, and may you guys stay safe in these times. God bless and namaste.